So this is just a quick video to myself. I'll probably have to talk more about it later because I have to work all day today. But I wanted to talk about it while it was still fresh in my mind. So last night I did that thing where I put the cold cloth on my crotch. And then I went to bed and I wasn't wearing any sweatpants. Usually I wear sweatpants and like a hoodie to bed just to stay warm. And I have a space heater. But I didn't wear any pants for some reason. And then I woke up all of a sudden and my heart was beating really, really fast. And it was beating fast, sort of like how it beats fast when I feel terrorized, like a homeless person. And I've had that experience where my heart starts beating really fast and I'm already sort of breaking down into psychosis as it's understood currently. And then if that terrorizing heartbeat is accompanied by terrorizing thoughts, then it spirals. So I remember having that when I was in the psych ward in April. I woke up from not even really being asleep and I felt like I was bleeding out from the neck and I couldn't move until it finished. And then I got up and told the nurses. But so this was similar in that I sort of woke up and my heart was beating so fast. And I felt scared, but since I didn't let any story about it happen, I just had this sense that it wasn't going to last and that there was no need to add panic to this physiological sensation. I didn't need to add a story about why I was that terrified, because I could see that I was in my bed. And I've had that once before when I woke up, I was falling asleep and I woke up, all of a sudden my heart was beating really fast and I felt like I might have to kill myself. And then that's when I enacted my plan to get my handcuffs, to handcuff myself to a pipe so I couldn't do anything bad to myself. And by the time I'd sort of gathered things to do that, I felt like I didn't have to anymore. I felt like I didn't have to tether my body like I did that very first time. And then, so having the handcuffs made me feel safe in that, being able to realize that I could stop myself from doing something bad, even if I would still be experiencing some inner turmoil. That gave me that safety and that calmness to not add more panic to it, not knowing I didn't have a plan to save myself. A lot of times it might look like people have a plan to end their life, but it could be just that they don't have a plan to save their life. And I always have my zap strap right beside my bed, and I could secure myself to the bed frame if need be. So I sort of had a sense of that, but I didn't feel like I needed that at all while I was waiting for this heartbeat terror to stop. But I did have a sense, oh, I could take a Seroquel because I keep 4 Seroquel right beside my bed. It's enough to knock me out pretty good, I think. So I could just take the Seroquel, or I could zap strap myself and then take the Seroquel. There's a number of things I could do. And since that happened, it probably is a good idea for me to not deadbolt my door, because if I do zap strap myself, somebody has the key to my place and I could call them, because my phone's always beside my bed with a charger, and they would be able to come and unfasten me. And I would likely wait until I was calm, so I wasn't being met while I'm in a panic. And so I waited for my heart to stop pounding, and it probably only took a minute. And I thought maybe it was 4 in the morning, but I checked the time and it was like 10:30, so an hour after I went to sleep. And then after my heart stopped beating like that, I was absolutely freezing cold. I was shaking, and the only times I've been that cold and shaking are when I'm pretty much on the way to the psych ward, because I'm shaking, feeling like I'm a homeless person. And I'm shaking when somebody comes to find me and take me to the psych ward. And I do feel that there's something to this whole shaking thing. It's almost like the heart beats faster, the blood flows more, and then the body gets cold and sort of shakes it off. And how they talk about going in cold water is very healing. It's almost like getting rid of inflammation. It's getting rid of a lot of different things. The blood lady even told me it gets rid of the radiation stored in our body somehow. So I feel like that can happen without having to go into cold water. The body goes into this cold shaking process. And it's not necessarily pleasant, but I feel it's almost like shaking something off. Shaking off some entropy, shaking off some old information. Instead of shaking off the inflammation by going in cold water, it's almost like shaking off information, shaking off old realities. And I probably will buy this book called Quantum Jumps, even though I prefer to just unfold things for myself. But seeing as I'm going to California, the more framework and context I have for understanding consciousness deciding to travel a little bit, or that our consciousness exists in multiple realities and we can sort of shift between those realities in an instant. And thinking about it, she was saying, the lady that wrote the book, Cynthia Larson, was saying, have you ever had an experience where something was there and then it wasn't and then it was there? Well, I remember the first time I went to the psych ward, I got in the elevator and I went down a floor. I was supposed to go down 2 floors, but it stopped on the floor below. And I saw a flash of a nurse, probably one of those nurses that pushes the cart because she's doing all the blood tests. And then the door closed. And then the elevator went down. And then the door opened. And it was the exact same scene. Exact. And it wasn't my imagination. So I'm seeing now that it's sort of like multiple realities happening in parallel dimensions and consciousness being in more than one. And it's freaking confusing. And the very first time I was the most confused. And as time goes on, it's less confusing, and maybe because it happens less, or maybe because as consciousness moves through time, it's sort of collapsing the multiple realities. Because I actually feel, like the blood lady said, that I was sort of thrust into a different reality. And I feel that happened 6 years ago when I was in a situation that wasn't good. And I feel like some other element of consciousness actually had to come in, take over my body in order for me to get out of there. And so since then, I've kind of been part me, part other realities. And it's almost like when some kind of miracle happens and it's sort of hard to explain, like how did a person get out of that situation? Like, it doesn't make sense. That's another thing the blood lady mentioned, was something about wormholes. I think we can go through a wormhole, and our consciousness goes through a wormhole, and then we end up in a different version of our body. And I think that's the way I was able to get out of that bad scenario that I won't elaborate on. But ever since that time, it's almost like, I don't know if it's like using up karma points, but it's using up some kind of fuel. It's like I like to, I used to think it's good to have the universe on my side. And sometimes something happens where the universe is really on my side, and it's like, oh crap, that used up a lot of that energy, because the universe had used so much capacity because to help me out in that situation. I had a situation where my iPhone was stolen, and I asked the universe to give me my iPhone back. And I went home and I found it on Craigslist, and I went and I got the phone off the person who took my phone. And it was sort of like a Mission Impossible scenario. But I realized that the universe really helped me out there, and I'm really feeling that when a person is having all these weird experiences, it says more about reality than it says about the person. And the fact that so many people have similar processes, they're not necessarily the same experiences, but similar processes happening. Seeing something that's not there and all these things, it could have something to do more with multiple realities and the fluidity of reality and the fluidity of consciousness, and our myopic view about how reality unfolds so linearly. And thinking back, now that I've been alerted to this framework of quantum jumps, it makes sense. And so all of this context I've built through talking to myself, I think saved me in a way, because that experience last night lasted maybe 5 minutes between the heart pounding and being kind of scared, and then freezing cold, and then having to get up, put on pants, turn on my space heater to a higher temperature, really change my body position to warm myself up. And then I just went back to sleep instead of thinking like, oh my God, like I'm getting ill. It was just this, almost like this leap into past consciousness, maybe shedding some of the past stuff. And I was able to just witness it and go through it. And even having the context I created about the entropy and the change in temperature of the body, and the heart beating faster, and how that feeds information to consciousness, and blah blah blah, all of the stuff I talked about. I just had a phone call. I don't remember. I think I was saying, I guess creating a language in a way, for myself at least, for how I understand my body is talking to me when it has a fast heartbeat or is shivering like that for no reason, for no apparent reason. And then also thinking about entropy and all these different elements, even though that part isn't being told to me in my mind in a linear fashion, like, oh, this means this and this means that. That context has been created in my brain cells and in all the cells of my body by talking in my own voice and bathing myself in this context through my own voice. And I didn't freak out at all. Whereas if the cells, if the DNA, if the cells of the brain had a different context, like, this means I'm decompensating, this means I need to call for help, this means I'm dying, this means whatever, then I likely would have panicked. So there's a difference between the body doing something and panicking about it. So I guess just leaving that deadbolt unlocked and being watchful, because I've had some weird things lately. Weird things that are really weird, but they're also very spaced out, and they're not gaining momentum. They're not taking me over and pulling me down to those other levels of consciousness, maybe because higher levels of context, of consciousness through which consciousness can perceive the world, have been created in my brain. And I don't know if this is true, but I feel like it's possible. Because I feel, I don't know if I want to say stronger, but I feel sort of nonchalant about it. So yeah, I gotta get going, but hopefully I'll get to talk to myself a bit later. I might not. So it's sort of a short video day. I've been doing some long days recently. I'll probably buy that book and read it, because I have a sense that it will be very similar to what I'm saying and provide a framework that a physicist has created, and maybe fill in a few gaps. And I really feel like I need those rules, I need that map in order to be able to celebrate living in that land of map making with that other compass, with the compass of consciousness and perception.